Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 16th of November, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So an update here from the Relayer.wtf team, which is builder0x69.eth. Now this is a blog post you can go check out for yourself, but the TLDR is that going forward you can send bundles to builder0x69.io even when they don't have sufficient balance to cover gas fees. Our builder will cover all necessary gas fees for transactions as long as these fees are returned at the end of the bundle. So if you have been using the Relayer.wtf service here, well, this is relevant to you. Now, well, I haven't checked the website in a little while on the refuel to show you the growth that's been happening with this Relayer. They got up to 10,000 validators registered on their Relayer with 8,237 active at time of recording. Now, the difference here is that you can register with this Relayer at once and then use it and then move off of it and use another Relayer and come back. Typically, what you'll see with validators is that they won't just stick to one relayer. If one is, consistently more profitable than the one they're on, people may change. And it's not just profitability that they change for. There's various other reasons why they would, but that's the difference between registered and active. So it seems about 1,800 validators that have registered are not currently active on Relayer.wtf, but still cool to see that 10,000 have been registered with them. And speaking of relayers, it's about time for us to have another look at the MEV Watch website. I like checking in on this every now and again. Now, I did mention that it seemed like it was coming down in the post-merge OFAC compliant blocks. It seems to have stalled at around 70-75%, I should say. And it seems to have plateaued there. It doesn't seem to be growing much more anymore. Doesn't mean it can't grow into the future, but it seems to have plateaued around there. And you can see here, if we include all blocks, it's 84%, and it was at like 97%, I think, just a few weeks ago. So 73% currently of MEV boost blocks are enforcing that OFAC compliance. Obviously, still really bad, still something we need to fix, but it's good that it's not growing, right? It's good that it's plateaued there, which I like seeing. And then you can see in this chart, underneath the main chart, basically showing the graph of how this looks. So this is not including all blocks. This is just MEV boost blocks. You can see this is plateaued as well here. But we'll see how things go. If I go to the MEV boosted blocks, blocks are at max profit is still second here. That's a non-censoring relay. Flashbots is still first with 77% of the market share. Nothing really to report on there, but yeah, that's the current landscape of things. I mean, if you look at this chart, you can, as I said, like 97%. We were at 97% of all MEV boosted blocks being OFAC compliant on October 27th, which wasn't that long ago. Now we're down to 82%, and we kind of like went down to 77%, came back up a little bit. That's probably due to profitability of different relays. Obviously, as the market heated up because of the FTX collapse, there was a lot of activity on chain, a lot of gas fees, a lot of MEV opportunities, and different relayers have different ways of capturing that there. So just checking in on that. And related to MEV is staking, and I just wanted to give a quick update on staking. Well, it seems that we're almost at 15 million ETH staked. We're at 14,988,095 ETH with 468,382 active validators. This is another big milestone for the Ethereum network. Absolutely awesome to see people still staking their ETH and validators still coming online, even though withdrawals haven't been enabled yet, obviously. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about as well. There's been some FUD going around over the last few days that withdrawals have been taken off the roadmap or have been delayed indefinitely or won't be here till 2024 or something like that. And it seems like it was all stemming from a website that posted an article saying this, because apparently the Ethereum.org website took away the estimated date of withdrawals coming to the Ethereum mainnet. Now, from what I can tell from the core devs calls, there has been no change in the fact of getting withdrawals into the Shanghai update, which is still due for Q1 or Q2 next year. So don't listen to these fudsters online. I don't even know why they're doing this. Honestly, there's a lot of Bitcoin maximalists. I mean, I know why they're doing it, because they're coping over the fact that they said the merge would never happen, and the merge happened. They have to shift the goalposts. And I just wonder, when withdrawals are enabled, what are they going to start saying? You know what they're going to start saying? I already know what they're going to start saying. They're going to be like, oh, look at all the ETH that's about to be unlocked to be dumped on everyone, right? There's always a shifting goalpost. And as I've said before on the refuel, if a group of people or if someone keeps shifting the goalpost every time one of their arguments is proven to be wrong, they're not someone worth listening to, in my opinion. But yeah, just felt like that was necessary to bring up. Nothing has changed from what I can tell on the withdrawals front. Every core developer, or at least most of them, really want withdrawals in Shanghai. And as I said, it is not as complex as something like EIP 4844. So there's no kind of 50-50 chance or anything. As I've said, I think 99% chance it goes in. Obviously, always leaving that 1% chance open just in case anything goes wrong. And I'm not expecting anything to go wrong there. So cool to see, cool to see that the validators are still coming online and that more ETH is being staked, even though, as I said, we don't have withdrawals yet. And I don't know, I haven't had a look at who they're going with. Maybe I should have kind of checked that before I got on the refuel here. Seems that there are a bunch going into Lido, but other services are still getting traction as well. If I go to rated.network, actually, I can bring up this website. One of my favorites to kind of monitor this stuff. You can see Lido has gone back above 30%. It's up 30.44%, so it has moved a little bit there. Rocket Pool went down a little bit, unfortunately, due to other, I guess, like entities going up, but it's still around the 2% mark. I wonder if there's a history here of network penetration. I think there might be, or maybe they're planning to do it. I actually don't know. I haven't seen a history here, but still, regardless, more ETH is being staked. It's being staked with various entities. Still, obviously, can't, network penetration for a lot of these things can't really go down because withdrawals aren't enabled. Man, I mean, I can't wait for withdrawals to be enabled for, so many different reasons, but I think this is obviously a major one. But still, as I said, cool to see more validators coming online and looking forward to hitting that 15 million ETH staked mark any day now. All right, so MetaMask announced today that they have introduced something called MobyMask, which is a new initiative from one of MetaMask's co-founders, Dan Finlay, to help proactively protect users from phishing by using a dynamic web of trust for sourcing phishing reporters. So, in partnership with this Laconic network, we are launching a special MobyMask caching Ethereum Lite client, which greatly reduces the cost for an individual organization to host a trustworthy copy of the MobyMask anti-phishing registry. So that's cool. They're actually releasing a light client for this. And the goal is simple: to eliminate phishers forever. The current version of MobyMask focuses on Twitter phishing, but eventually will expand to any kind of phishing like websites, smart contracts, and new social media platforms. People running the MobyMask Watcher client will contribute to a more phishing-resistant web and gain access to a private API for looking up phishing reports, which they can then share as they like, either at no cost or for a fee. Try it out by heading to MobyMask.com, which of course you can do. Now, this is cool because I've gone over similar, solutions in the same vein before, like Fire, where basically it'll tell you what you're interacting with so that it can kind of protect you from getting phished potentially, or protect you from interacting with things that you shouldn't be. And I've also talked about Daylight before, which they've got an update as well, which I'll cover, which is basically a firewall for your addresses. But MobyMask is another solution here, where it's basically trying to create a web of trust around various things that you can interact with using your wallet on through MetaMask here, and it's using a light client as well to make sure that that can be verified locally without having obviously to run a full node to verify that. So that's just awesome. I love that. I love this initiative from MetaMask, and it certainly feels like with the push to get people to do more self-custody, to do more things on-chain, we definitely need to build more of these protections and put more of these protections in place, because I think the worst thing that can happen is that we get people coming on-chain, they self-custody their assets, and then they don't actually understand that on-chain isn't, completely safe. There are ways to lose your funds, there are ways to get phished, and they end up getting phished, and then they get burnt from doing stuff on-chain forever. That's the worst thing that can happen, obviously, because once you send your funds somewhere, or once you get your funds drained from your wallet, there's no way of getting them back. I mean, the same would be true for a centralized exchange. For example, if for some reason someone was able to withdraw funds from a centralized exchange from your account and withdraw them to their own address, there's pretty much no way you could claw that back. But a centralized exchange has a bunch of protections in place. It has like two-factor authentication, email verification, trusted address lists, and all those sorts of things, right? So if we can bring all of that to MetaMask, to other wallets on chain, which is something like Argent's been trying to do with smart contract wallets, if we can do all that, we can make the on-chain ecosystem a much safer place for people, and have people more, encourage people to use on-chain stuff and then not have them get wrecked, so to speak, right? And I think one of the biggest ways people get wrecked is that they visit one of these phishing sites which purport to be or pretend to be or, basically a clone of something like Uniswap. The interface all looks very similar. Everything looks like it should. And then you approve something on a contract that basically gives the person that set up that phishing website full permission to drain your funds. That's happened a lot of times before, and it's going to keep happening into the future. So if we can build something directly into the popular wallets that basically say to people, hey, this is not the real, Uniswap website that you're interacting with, please don't interact with this one. Please report. It's been reported as phishing. Then we can protect people from getting duped here, which I think is really, really important, right? So yeah, we're going to leave that one at that. I did mention before that I was going to talk about Daylight in the context of security, but I think I got myself mixed up there. It wasn't Daylight that was the firewall that I spoke about a few weeks ago, that kind of thing. It was different to Fire, but it basically allowed you to have a firewall to whitelist things that you interact with. It's not called Daylight. I can't remember the name right now. Daylight was another thing that I spoke about, but it's different. This is basically a way to discover different things that your wallet can do, different abilities that your wallet can do, such as claiming airdrops, claiming POAPs, renewing ENS, unlocking events, and all that good stuff there. Their announcement today is that they're out of closed beta. So you no longer need to get any special invites or NFTs or anything like that. You can go check out their web app, connect your wallet to it. It's all free. It's open to everyone. So yeah. But yeah, apologies, I mixed up my words before when talking about this. There's too many projects now, too many protocols now. I get mixed up sometimes here. But yeah, you can go check out Daylight now if you haven't yet. As I said, it's out of closed beta. Go give it a try. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so speaking of too many protocols these days, there's been a couple that got announced today. So one of them is called Price Protocol, which is a permissionless and reliable solution that leverages UniV3 and Keeper automation to provide safe price quotes on any existing token, and this has been created by the team at Wonderland. So you can learn why Price has the potential to take DeFi to the next level in this thread here. But it's cool to see that we've still got these protocols coming out, even though I guess like it's a bear market and we had the FTX collapse and there's so much, I guess, a noise out there, but DeFi keeps shipping, right? And Price Protocol is, as they describe it here, the ultimate Oracle solution to provide price quotes on any token in a safe, reliable, and permissionless way. So basically, it's a competitor, I guess, like competitor or maybe complementary to something like Chainlink and Empiric Network, some other Oracle projects out there. But as I said, like Price is built on top of Uniswap v3, thus inheriting all of its decentralized and sustainable features. In addition, it solves the following three issues. Trust issues. Price makes liquidity trustworthy and predictable for the Oracle's users. Complexity. Everything is managed by smart contracts. We created a hassle-free experience for our users. And multi-block attacks. Price uses automation to detect and correct price manipulations, including multi-block attacks. Now, I don't know how much I trust something like this off the bat, because oracles have notoriously been quite hard to get right and quite prone to manipulation, because if you can successfully manipulate a price of an oracle and that can feed into something like a lending app, for example, you can stand to make a lot of money taking the other side of that trade. There has been other attempts at this using Uniswap for as a price oracle for, I guess, long tail assets with Euler, but I don't know if they've re-enabled it, but they did disable it because of the risk of multi-block kind of attacks and multi-block MEV attacks, which I've talked about before, about how if you knew that you were going to be the proposer for a few blocks in a row, you could potentially manipulate the oracle price of something on Uniswap and then potentially manipulate it on the money market and then profit from that, as I just explained. So I'm cautiously optimistic about something like this. I obviously wouldn't be trusting it just yet. I wanted to see it play out in the wild, want to see how it all goes. But the Wonderland team is definitely not new. They've been around for quite a while now, and I think they definitely seem to know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, there's definitely a lot of questions here, a lot of things to still scrutinize. And of course, Chainlink God here, who obviously, as his name implies, is a big fan of Chainlink, was putting the pressure on already, asking, surely you wouldn't leave out the trust assumptions and trade-offs of TWAP oracles. So TWAP is time-weighted average price oracles, and this is, I've spoken about before, how people are using Uniswap as a TWAP oracle, and how there's issues with that, not just with multi-block MEV, but just generally it's prone to price manipulation depending on the liquidity of the pair of the asset pair, right? So there are issues here, but I think this shouldn't prevent people from creating new oracles, new protocols that take advantage of this. But there are things to iron out. So I'm going to keep an eye on price protocol myself, but very, very cool to see this announced today. All right, another protocol that got announced today was, or I guess like a project that got announced today is something called Superform, which is a universal yield marketplace. So basically, they've got a blog post here describing what they are. They've got a bunch of different graphics here as well that you can go check out. But the Twitter thread gives us the TLDR. So basically, Superform starts this thread off by saying, it's time for access and distribution of yield to evolve. Finding, accessing, and managing yield is clunky and fragmented. Distributing yield is time and resource intensive. Superform combines these experiences into a single seamless non-custodial interface. You can browse yield opportunities and make single transaction deposits using any asset into any ERC 4626 vault, which I've spoken about before on the Refuel, on any chain. The Superform uses sockets to combine bridges, swaps, and deposits into a single action. So you can permissionally list any of these vaults for instant omni-chain distribution. Protocols like MStable, Maple, and Som Finance are already building their vaults using 4626, and many more are following. So this is basically an evolution of that 4626 yield standard I've been talking about, and basically making it really easy for people to get access to yield, but not have to go through not have to jump through all the hoops to do that. Because as more protocols come online, as more yield opportunities come online, it does blow it out. And it kind of becomes a thing of, well, you need a third-party tool to just go and comb through things in order to find the best yield. But what if you had a third-party tool that didn't just show you all the best yields, but it actually brought them all together and just told you what it was, right? And across any chain, whether it be Ethereum mainnet or layer 2s or other layer 1s, and basically automates that entire process. I think that is the future of yield. But it will also, what it will also do, fortunately or unfortunately, is that it will collapse yields eventually too. Because the thing is that a lot of the time when you're seeing a relatively high yield, it's usually due to information asymmetry. It's due to not enough people knowing about this yield, and then not enough people plowing into it to bring the yield down, or not knowing about this yield opportunity, I should say, and not enough people plowing into it to bring the yield down, which they naturally do over time once that information asymmetry collapses. There's also things like risk involved too. Like, don't get me wrong, there are risk premiums to things, but on net, if everyone knows about the yield opportunity and they plow their money into it, the yield will obviously come down. Now, it depends where the yield is coming from as well, because there is a natural yield that you can get, or a real yield as it's called, and then there is a kind of, I guess, like an inflated or an artificial yield. An example of an artificial yield or something that is not a real yield would be token incentives, where you're providing liquidity to something and you're getting a token incentive, and that is included in the yield calculation. That is not a real yield, right? But an example of a real yield is something that is being paid by users. So for example, there is debates about this, but in Ethereum staking, the block rewards that you get for attesting to blocks, for proposing blocks, and for being part of a subcommittee are not considered the real yield. The real yield is considered to be the yield coming from the execution layer, so from fees and MEV. But then there are debates around the fact of the matter is that you could say that the real, I mean, the terminology gets confusing because people use it interchangeably, but you could say that, okay, well, here's the network issuance of Ethereum, right? Not including the burn, just here's the network issuance, but then take away that from the yield that validators are getting without just the consensus layer yield, so just the block rewards, attestations and subcommittee yield, and that becomes like part of the real yield. I actually think that's fine to do it that way, but the yield, that part of the yield is being paid out by the protocol itself, not being paid out by users through fees and MEV. So, but I guess for sake of the argument and for sake of simplicity, it's much easier just to split it out in terms of, at least in crypto context, in terms of things that users are paying directly for, in terms like things like fees and MEV, and things that are being paid out by the protocol itself, or some other kind of like thing like token incentives, for example, right? So definitely anything with token incentives shouldn't be considered a real yield at all. It shouldn't be considered a natural yield because the token incentives don't last forever and they are at the whim of what the token price does as well, right? And at the whim of like the amount of people that plow into things and distributing the yield across and things like that. But I've gone on a bit of a tangent about yields there, but really cool to see something like Superform announce themselves today and come out and basically say, hey, we're going to take advantage of the new 4626 standard. And I think they're already live taking advantage of this, or maybe they're not live yet. I actually didn't check this out yet. I only saw this just before. Let me have a look if they're live right now. I don't know if they're live, but I think you can just check out the blog post. No, okay, here it is. Closed beta launch. So they're launching their closed beta on November 28th and will continue into the first quarter of next year as they complete audits of the contracts, polish the platform, and add even more functionality. They're going to initially grant access to Degen Score Beacon NFT holders and over time to users who sign up to the waitlist. So if you're interested, definitely go sign up to the waitlist. Go sign up to the waitlist. I'll leave a link to it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Aave is now live on Aztec. So the leading open source protocol for non-custodial liquidity markets, now with full privacy and 12 times lower gas fees than Layer 1. Aave is the biggest liquidity protocol on Ethereum with over 4 billion in total value locked. An innovator in permissionless lend and borrow, Aave allows you to supply assets to earn yield without financial intermediaries. So Aztec's integration with Aave allows users to deposit funds using Aztec Connect as a proxy, getting both cost savings and enhanced privacy. So what users can do is that they can now deposit their shielded ETH and DAI into Aave and earn yield from a fully decentralized liquidity protocol and deposit with 12 times lower gas fees than Layer 1 with DeFi deposit batching. Split the fees with other users and save on gas while protecting your privacy. This tweet here actually got my brain spinning just then. It's funny that even though doing privacy stuff on Layer 2 is more expensive than not doing it privately on other Layer 2s, right, on such as Optimism and Arbitrum, you're still better off using Aztec to do your transactions than Ethereum mainnet because it's still 12 times, in this example, 12 times cheaper than Ethereum mainnet. So if you are an avid Aave user and you want to protect your privacy, then even though, as I said, it's more expensive than interacting with Aave on Optimism or Arbitrum, from what I've seen, you're still better off because you get privacy with this, which I think is really, really cool. So really awesome to see Aave live on here. I mean, Aztec seems to be, they're moving slow-ish, right? But they seem to be kicking goals with who they're onboarding. They're onboarding all the star DeFi protocols in order to give people that fully private experience of using DeFi and using Aztec Connect to bridge with the liquidity from Layer 1 to Layer 2, because obviously that's very, very important. Rather than trying to bootstrap the liquidity on Layer 2 altogether, you're tapping into the existing Layer 1 liquidity, which is still very large. As I said, it's $4 billion worth in Aave right now. Obviously, that fluctuates depending on the price of various assets. But yeah, cool to see this from Aztec. Go check it out. Go use it if you are on Aztec. All right, so Polygon announced something today called Quest, which is a play-to-earn gamification feature added to the Polygon wallet suite that rewards you for achieving certain goals. If you are new to Polygon, then Quest is a great way to start, and you can learn more on the blog post here, which I'm just loading up right now if it wants to load. Yeah, here we go. So this has been added to the Polygon wallet suite, which if you are someone who uses that, as you can see in the screenshots here, you can take advantage of this. So it's basically gamifying the experience of using the Polygon POS chain network here, which is something that we've seen, I guess, other protocols do. Obviously, Arbitrum did it with Odyssey, and Optimism is doing it with their own Quest thing. I think there's been other platforms out there that have similar initiatives, but Polygon has joined the fray now. So if you are an avid Polygon POS chain user, which I suspect a lot of you are, this may be something that you're interested in and that you can go check out. I'll link this in the YouTube description for you to do so. But I love seeing these gamification stuff coming to crypto in general. I think that really, when you think about it, liquidity mining was a gamification feature, right? And now we're just incorporating things like NFTs into it. But really, when liquidity mining got popularized, so to speak, when Compound did it in the start of DeFi Summer of 2020, it was a super gamified thing. I remember feeling like I was playing a video game while doing all of the stuff during DeFi Summer that I was doing, and I wasn't the only one feeling like this. Like, people were making memes about it. All my friends were saying, this feels like an MMO, an on-chain MMO sort of thing. But obviously, instead of game characters and assets, it was DeFi protocols. And then the NFT mania happened, and that really started to feel like a video game. And now people are incorporating those two things into gamification with NFTs. And then obviously we have crypto games and things like that as well. So it really does feel like it's just evolved over time. And I don't think I've seen something that is able to incentivize people more than gamification. I think that's very, very important. But at the same time, there is kind of like a bad way to do it where it looks like a Ponzi, right? We've seen plenty of those things play out, but then there is a good way to do it where you're incentivizing users to do something, but without making it look like a Ponzi, without making it really risky, and without promising users all this kind of money for doing it. And that's doing it with NFTs, where you basically say to people, hey, you could earn these NFTs for doing these things, and these NFTs entitle you to certain benefits, and then the users go and do it, and it gets more activity on chain, and they discover, and by doing this stuff to get the NFTs, they discover different apps on these different ecosystems, and they discover different ways to interact with things, which I think is very cool and very positive. All right, so Taiko has a new blog post out today called "The Type 1 ZK-EVM," and there's a summary of the post in the Twitter thread here, I should say. But definitely recommend giving this blog post a read because it goes through such questions of what is a Type 1 ZK-EVM? What does a Type 2 plus ZK-EVM change? What are the impacts of these changes? Why does proof generation cost matter? And why use a Type 1 ZK-EVM? So if you're interested in learning all about Type 1 ZK-EVMs and why Taiko has decided to go down this path rather than the other types of ZK-EVMs, then this blog post is for you. I'll, of course, link it in the YouTube description below, but great to see more of these educational posts coming out because obviously the ZK-EVM space, we started off as just a ZK-EVM. Now we have different types of ZK-EVMs, and then we have different ways to construct them, and then we have different ways that they're going to be deployed, different cryptography that they're built on, right? All those sorts of things. So you can go give this blog post a read to learn more about how Taiko is approaching a Type 1 ZK-EVM. All right, finally here, I have a bit of commentary about a tweet from Brian Armstrong today where he said, Twitter has broken just about every piece of this FTX story using blockchain analytics, while the New York Times is writing puff pieces on a criminal. Feels like a turning point for citizen journalism and loss of trust in mainstream media. So for those of you who missed this, the New York Times put out a fluff piece about SBF and FTX yesterday, and they put out another one today, and they haven't really done any deep investigative journalism on this, and they haven't really called it for what it is, like fraud and a scam and all that sorts of stuff. But Brian's tweet got me thinking, and the thing I want to focus on here is this term citizen journalism. Now, citizen journalism in theory is really great. It's basically this notion of people coming together and doing investigative journalism and then collating all their resources and coming to a source of truth, so to speak, right? And shining a light on things as a collective. But the dark side of that is that there's usually a lot of quote-unquote fake news or inaccurate information that tends to spread while the fact-checking and while the information is being collated. Now, we've seen the effects of that over the past few years in serious things like elections, right? We've seen the effects in crypto, how FUD just seems to spread really, really fast. As I said before, there's this new FUD over the past few days about ETH withdrawals, which just came out of nowhere, which makes absolutely no sense. But that's the dangers of citizen journalism. Now, of course, mainstream media and media just in general comes with the same dangers of putting out the wrong information, putting out biased information, misleading people. But I want to kind of, warn people against just going all in on citizen journalism. I think it's great, but it has to be a measured approach. I figure that if you see someone tweeting about something and they're not a journalist or anything like that, they're just spreading some information, definitely don't just take their word for it, just like you wouldn't take one media publication's word for something. You want to cross-reference it with different publications. You want to wait for more information to come out. If there's only one publication saying something and they're saying they have a source somewhere, you want to just wait. You don't want to form an opinion. You don't want to think that something's true until more information comes out. So I think the same is true for citizen journalism, just as it's true for normal journalism, right? And mainstream media and things like that. So with that out of the way, I do want to say that it's been pretty cool to see Twitter becoming the home base or home ground for breaking the FTX story. And I think that it's a lot of the reason is because crypto people live on Twitter generally, right? And a lot of the information gets put out on Twitter generally for anything got to do with crypto. And obviously the key players were tweeting about this. Twitter's like the town square, right, where everything happens. Everyone's gossiping about things. People are screaming things out, and people will hear them and follow them, and there'll be notice boards where there's public information on there and public things on there, and then people can reply to these notice boards and say that this is correct or not correct, and people do all this collating of information, as I mentioned, which I think is pretty cool. But as I said, like, it's best to just make sure that you're getting the right information and not take things at face value. I'm guilty of sometimes putting out the wrong information unknowingly, because there's actually a difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is when you're putting something out there, either unknowingly or knowingly. I guess like mostly unknowingly, because you haven't checked your sources, you haven't verified the information, and you're spreading this misinformation by doing that. Whereas disinformation is people knowingly spreading the wrong information. Like they literally know what they're saying is a lie, is false, is not accurate. So there is a key difference there between those two. And I think the disinformation thing obviously is happening a lot and at scale on Twitter. But the misinformation thing happens just as easily, or even more so, because of the retweet function, for example, right? Like if you retweet something without checking the source, if it's coming from someone that you generally trust and you retweet it, well, that information tends to spread very, very quickly. And the rebuttal later, if you want to correct yourself, or if someone lays a correction out there, that tends to not be seen by nearly as many people as the original story got seen by, or his original piece of information got seen by. So just always worth keeping that stuff in mind, but still cool to see that Twitter is playing such an absolutely massive part in stories like the FTX story. And I think it will continue to play that, but do need to keep in mind that just because someone says something online doesn't make it true. I mean, people lie online all the time, people lie in real life all the time. It's best to get your information from multiple different sources, make sure they all match up, make sure that it's accurate, and ideally you want to get your information directly from the source. And that's what's very powerful about Twitter, is that you can get your information directly from the source, but also remember that the direct source can lie. Just like we've seen over the collapses of this year, there were lies from the biggest players saying that everything was under control, everything was fine, and then it turns out everything wasn't. So it's good to not take anyone's word at gospel. Collate your different sources together and make sure that the story lines up between all of them. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.